So I've been thinking a lot about this topic, and this is going to end up being a video that I put up on the main channel. This is a discussion about kind of like the speed of Monster Hunter at this point. Because, you know, we've had World, we've had Rise, and when World came around, it was a massive improvement. It was, like I said, it was the single biggest evolutional leap that we've seen in the series. So, you know, I didn't even question it. I was like, dude, this is amazing. This is awesome. I freaking love everything about it. And then came Rise, and Rise also evolved the combat in a significant way. But it also made everything faster. Much, much faster. Like, Rise is almost Monster Hunter on crack, if you look back at what the experience used to be, which is, you know, I've recently rewatched a couple of these videos just for the gameplay. This is a really old video of mine where I'm hunting a white monoblos. This is from 8 years ago, and I'm playing this on a PlayStation Vita. And in case you guys are wondering how I'm capturing it, note that the screen is not perfectly aligned. Like, you can actually see that there's like, if there was white up here, you'd be able to see that the lines are going like this, right? It's almost like a pyramid. The reasoning behind that is because back when I recorded this, I actually did not have like a capture thing on my PlayStation Vita. So I had this stand that I bought, which had like a suction cup, and it would stick on the table, and then you could like place your Vita on it, and that would kind of just like make it stand still. And, you know, the Vita wouldn't move as much when I was operating the button. Sometimes you can see me moving it a little bit, but that's why you have such a huge black border in here, because this is how long I've like loved Monster Hunter games that I wanted to capture it, even though I didn't even have the proper hardware to capture it. And I have no idea what I'm doing here, by the way. Like, I didn't actually know how to play the game proper. So it's like I'm not doing proper combos with gun lance. I'm just like slapping things. Like, this hunt took me like 30 minutes. I don't know how long like it would take people to do a white monoblos and free them unite, but I can probably imagine it's probably not 30 minutes. This is just me being a complete and absolute nooblet, and I'm even getting like trounced around by minions and whatnot. But anyways, this is to kind of show you the different pace that you had in hunts. Because, like, sure, people wouldn't take 30 minutes, but I highly doubt that people would come in here and within like 5 minutes or something with a longsword, they just like beat the crap out of this monster, right? At least I don't think that's what people were doing back in the day, but I could be wrong. Who knows? But that's just to illustrate kind of like something that we've lost over the years, as we moved from old Monster Hunter into Monster Hunter World, and from Monster Hunter World into Monster Hunter Rise. And I don't think that this is a bad thing. I think that these are different styles of Monster Hunter. But ultimately, one of the things that we've noticed is that we're definitely moving more towards the faster style of Monster Hunter, if Rise is to be believed. Like, I don't think that Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak is going to slow things down at all, because considering that it's a G rank expansion, I would expect Sunbreak to, you know, it's still going to feature the wire bug. It's still going to feature all of the redonkulous mobility that we have. It's still going to feature the somewhat smaller maps. It's going to feature all of those things, right? And what I've been thinking about is like, but which one did I actually like the most? Right? Do I like faster Monster Hunter the most? I mean, I definitely love the combat of Monster Hunter Rise because, you know, it gave me the best moveset that I've ever seen in the gun lance. Even if the gun lance is very poorly balanced, it's still the best moveset that I've ever seen on the weapon. Right? But it is really, really fast. And I think that as a consequence of how fast it was, a lot of people went through the whole game super fast and got to the end. They were like, I don't have anything left to do. Well, yeah, because you did everything. like super fast. Maybe some people maybe didn't even take their time. Whatever. For whatever reason, it happens to be that people fell off of Monster Hunter Rise. The question that's been haunting my mind is like, what is the right approach? And this is almost the question that I pose to anyone that watches this video on YouTube, and even on the stream. We can talk about it once I finish exposing my case. But like, what is it that you would prefer? Not for Rise Sunbreak, because Rise Sunbreak is going to follow in the footsteps of Rise. It's going to be the fast version of Monster Hunter. It's going to be with all of the quality of life, with the restocks and all of that stuff, right? And what would you prefer as someone who has played Monster? Would you prefer the older, more methodical, not necessarily the old style combat, but like, let's say Monster Hunter World style combat, but just with a more preparation emphasis on the hunts? Maybe no scout flies, maybe actually having to use paintballs. Like, yes, I'm going back as far as having to use paintballs, because I do feel that losing track of the monster is an aspect of the hunt, right? I mean, the title of this video is probably going to end up being something like hunting versus boss fights. If you go to Monster Hunter Rise, and even after you've played a significant chunk of hours, after you've acquired a certain amount of knowledge of the monsters in Monster Hunter World, you're not really hunting the monster. You're running up until you find like your first track of the monster, in the case of Monster Hunter World, and then you use that first track, and the moment you touch that first track, you can see where the monster is. So the hunting part of it is kind of done. At that point, you're just fighting it. You're not really hunting it anymore, if you really think about it. You can call it, no, I'm hunting it. I'm still chasing it across the map, and it's running away, and we're doing the dance of like chasing and running. But at the end of the day, are you really hunting it? Because the map is just one big arena, and you can see where the monster is always. The worst the monster can do to you, it's like it'll run away and then get to a spot, and then you get to that spot and you'll take off and run away again. Sure, that can happen, but that's not really the norm. That's like a couple of exceptions where some monsters will do stuff like that. But it's not like you're going to lose track of it. You're not really going to lose track of monsters if you're playing World or Rise. The monsters are always in the map. In the case of Rise, you don't even need to gather tracks or whatever. You have the Kahoot that basically just tells you where the monster is, which I would assume that for Sunbreak, that is going to be the same thing. Maybe they'll change it, because Sunbreak does have like some Eastern European mythology monsters that could potentially hide themselves in the map. That could be a mechanic that they do, but I doubt it. I think the Kahoot is just going to identify where the monster is at all times, and I think that that's just an aspect that that's just an aspect of the game that they're not going to address. Trying to figure out where the monster is, actually, searching for it, paintballs, all of that stuff. B9 Boyd, thank you very much for the raid. Tip of the hat. Thank you. But anyway, so on the first topic of that, one of the things that you'll notice on this map that we have right here is that it's a split map. You see the different areas, like Area 1, Area 2, Area 3, Area 7. And, you have all of these different areas. And I've been thinking a lot about this, like, which one would I prefer? Do I prefer the maps in Monster Hunter Rise? Would I prefer to have split maps? And I'll be real, I don't have the actual answer. Like, I've thought about it a lot. And I can see the benefits of both. But here's the thing, right? Having one cohesive map feels great, but at the same time, I feel like maps in Rise feel smaller than maps in previous entries, because the fact that you had this travel time, it gives you the illusion that the map is bigger, even though it's not. At least I don't think the map is bigger just in terms of sheer area, but it does give you the illusion that the map is bigger because the monster can run to a different zone. In order for you to get there, there's a lot of travel time in between. And that in and of itself gives it, that illusion. Whereas, in Rise and World, you can just go like, no, teleport me to this camp, and then from this camp, I'll run over here and do all of that stuff. It's a convenient thing, and it makes you go faster from place to place. And it makes the hunt go faster. It makes everything go faster. Is that a positive, or is there something lost in the hunting aspect there? Are you really hunting, or are you just like chasing a monster down and then beating on it? And I'm not putting forth like straight up facts or anything. I'm putting forth the question because I too am not 100% sure of what the answer is. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know that I feel like we've missed something. And even though I don't have an answer when it comes to split maps, I do have an answer when it comes to tracking the monster. And after really thinking about it, I mean, I have my own answer. I'm not telling you what's right or what's wrong. I'm just starting the discussion. But after thinking about it extensively, I do think that the Kahoot system and the Scoutfly system is not something that I'm a huge fan of. I like the paintball aspect of things. And this is something that I've been thinking about as well pretty much since they removed hot and cold potions, which was, I drew a line almost in the sand when they removed hot and cold, because I know that a lot of people didn't agree with it. And I mean, a lot of people didn't agree with it in the terms of like, a lot of people don't care about hot and cold. They're like, whatever, this doesn't affect my experience at all. But if you guys go back and you watch the podcasts, if you guys go back and watch my opinions on it, I've always been of the opinion that like, no, I think hot and cold is just something that greatly contributes to immersion. You can say, well, it's just maintaining a buff, right? At the end of the day, it's like you're just maintaining a buff. It's just a maintenance thing. It's not really a big deal. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you think like that, so is sharpening your weapon. So is eating meat. It's all a maintenance thing. You know, keeping up your stamina, that's a maintenance thing. Sharpening up your weapon, that's a maintenance thing. And why not take those away if you think about it? Right? Why not? If you're going to take away hot and cold, which is just a maintenance thing for the maps that you are hunting in, because it contributes to immersion. Just like whetstones contribute to immersion. Your weapon strikes the monster X amount of times, it becomes dull. You run through the map for a certain amount of time, you get tired, and therefore you need to eat. And again, yeah, like see right there, I just used the cold potion because, you know, I want to make sure that I'm not taking additional damage because the map is too hot. I think these are things that greatly contribute to immersion. And I think that the paintball is an aspect of that. You losing track of the monster is a good thing. Because at the end of the day, this is a hunt, and experienced hunters will know not to let those paintballs fall off. Some people will call it busy work, but it's like I said, I mean, at a certain point, you're not really playing Monster Hunter, you're playing Tokiden. And this is something that I realized with the recent talk that I had with Gaijin in the podcast, where we talked about Tokiden. And I'm sorry for the background noise, there's a train going by right now. But we talked about Tokiden, it's like, I'm not saying that Tokiden's a bad game. Far from it, quite the opposite. I love Tokiden. I think Tokiden's a fantastic game. But my old description of Tokiden was arcade Monster Hunter. You know, Tokiden is, for all intents and purposes, arcade monster. It's a Monster Hunter where you don't have to do this. You don't have to sharpen your weapon. You don't have to worry about items. You don't have to worry about your stamina dropping. You don't have to worry about any of that. You have like this Matama that does spells for you. I mean, he doesn't do spells, you do the spells, but the Matama provides you with spells, and the spells will heal you, the spells will do stuff for you. But I kind of think that that is the thing that sets Monster Hunter apart from more action-type games, right? Because the direction that Monster Hunter is going, if you're to consider the evolution from World to Rise, is it's going further and further towards action. And I just saw there that Jacob is really influencing. No, these are things that I've thought about before. These are things that I've thought about before, but the conversation with Jacob has kind of like brought those feelings bubbling up a little bit higher, for sure. And you know, so we talked about splitting the map. That one, I'm not sure which one I would prefer. I don't have like the right answer. I do think that the split up map gives me increased immersion, whereas the maps that we have in Rise, I'm able to navigate through them so fast that in a way, they almost stop feeling like actual maps and zones, and they feel more like arenas. like a boss fight arena. It's just a really big arena, but it's an arena. And the monster is just like stuck in there with me. Whereas in these maps, I feel like the monster can get away. It can get away. It can go regen. I can lose track of it because the tracking aspect and the map aspect are kind of like two things that are put together. I don't think we can go back to split maps, to the maps that we have here. Because like the audience has kind of grown used to the maps that we have right now. But failing that, I think we might need bigger maps. I don't know if we can do that or not. Or maybe having bigger zones or bigger maps, but maps that like connect each other. So like think of it like this. Imagine, for instance, that you have the maps of Monster Hunter World, and a monster is able to just straight up get out of the ancient forest and go to the Wildspire Wastes. See, now that's interesting. If you think about it like that, right? Imagine if a monster is able to just straight up leave the ancient forest and go to the Wildspire Wastes, and you can go hunt it on the Wildspire Wastes. And maybe this is even something that doesn't happen every quest, like it's a random chance. And if that happens, like, you know, maybe the quest finishes and you get an additional quest where you can go hunt it because maybe this monster was more powerful or something like that. Maybe you can maybe there's a chance that you can kill it. Maybe there's a chance it runs away and it generates another quest where you have to go hunt it someplace else. But see, that would add hunting elements to the game as opposed to boss fighting elements to the game. These are things that maybe you could still get some materials because you were scraping with the monster for a while and you still get some materials for that scraping. You were able to collect some scales. Your Palico was able to collect some stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, the hunt progressed and now you have to go somewhere else. Maybe this could even trigger different conditions on different monsters, right? Like, say, for instance, you have the mythos of the Kushala Daora that can molt and all of that. Maybe you could have a Kushala Daora that you're fighting, and if you fight it long enough or whatever, maybe it was a random thing during a quest, and that Kushala actually goes into the other map and he molts its skin off, and now you're fighting the different version of that Kushala, right? That'd be cool. So, you know, that's one of the things that I'm thinking about. And naturally, I'm thinking about this for the upcoming Monster Hunter, for whatever Monster Hunter 6 is going to be. Not for Sunbreak. This is not a Sunbreak discussion. This is for Monster Hunter 6, for the future of the Monster Hunter as a series. And it's just like a discussion starter to get the community to think about this, right? As a matter of fact, I really hope that other content creators in the Monster Hunter space would watch this video and think about the concepts that I'm presenting here, because I'm very interested in discussing all of this stuff, right? So we talked about split map. We talked about tracking monsters. Now, here's one thing that I've always talked about. It is the preparation aspect of the game. So the paintballs is part of the preparation aspect of the game, knowing which monster you're fighting, potentially using the right element. It would be cool if elements were good enough. I would love for elements to be good enough where elements are like the best way of doing things, whereas raw would be just like your you could have raw damage just be your jack of all trades, right? And it would still be really good, but elemental damage would always come out on top. I think that this is an essential thing. Dude, we actually got a tail chop on that Monobolus. Nice. But, so the preparation aspect to me, one thing that is essential is restocks. I think we should get rid of restocks for the next Monster Hunter. I highly doubt that's going to happen. Like, I don't believe that a lot of the things that I'm discussing here are going to happen in the next Monster Hunter, but I am putting the questions forward to gauge the reaction of the community, to gauge where the community lands on this, right? But like, the preparation aspect for me is pretty much a no-brainer. I don't think there should be any restocks. I think that restocks have definitely are one of the biggest things that has cheapened the Monster Hunter experience. Because like, I love the faster, more fluid combat, but I don't think you need restocks in order to make things happen. And I know that there's always this discussion on the community where they say like, you don't have to use restocks, you can go in there and not use it. Well, yes, but the hunts are made, when you have restocks, the hunts themselves are designed around you using restocks. And nowhere is that more apparent than like friggin' Fatalis. For your average player, restocks are one of the few things that are going to allow some people to finish that hunt solo. Without restocks, there's a lot of people that would not be able to finish Fatalis. It's just that simple in Monster Hunter World. But, to each their own. I'm just saying, I really don't like restocks, and I would love to see restocks going away. And it's like, even if you run out of items, I almost think that some people will think, oh, but then I'll run out of items and I'm kind of screwed. No, because in Monster Hunter, even if you run out of items, you can actually go through the map and you can collect herbs and honey, and you can make new potions. That's always been a thing. You can make new potions even if you run out of things. Like even gunners, you can go find stuff and make new ammunition. I don't know how it would work for gunners. I know that gunners struggle with that stuff. But I remember back in the day when my friend that got me into the game, he would run into hunts with like the combo books to increase the success chance of him crafting ammunition. And he would bring like tons and tons and tons of materials to just craft more ammunition. And I also remember when I played with Hengist that I used to bring like additional what are they called, the power coatings for the bow. And I think that was cool. The fact that I would bring things for my friend, like enhancing the cooperative aspect of it. I talked about this in the Jacob podcast, right? So to me, I think that restocks should just not be a thing. So just straight up get rid of them. You have to prepare before you jump into the hunt. You need to bring your hot potions. You need to bring your cold potions. If you mess it up, what's the worst that's going to happen? I mean, like, think about it. How fast are the loading screens of Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch, which is currently like the slowest loading console of all? Because like, if you're on PC, 90% of people are going to be on an SSD. If you're on PlayStation 5, you're on an SSD. If you're on Xbox Series X, you're on an SSD. So loading times are super fast. And even in Rise and the Switch, which does not have an SSD, the loading time is still pretty fast. So even if you jump into a hunt and you forget your hot or cold potion, you just leave and you come back. You just leave and you come back. It's that simple. That's the way that I look at that. And those are just some of the aspects that I would argue. Wire bugs, I don't think we'll see wire bugs outside of Monster Hunter Rise, so I don't really feel the need to talk too much about wire bugs. And I want to make sure that people understand, like, I'm not saying Rise is a bad game. I love Rise. I friggin' love Rise. I think Rise is amazing, and I'm glad that they did Rise because it's a good experience. It's something cool, and I like that they experiment with stuff. And I'm still going to have a blast with Rise when it comes out for PC, and when eventually Sunbreak comes out, I'm going to be enjoying the crap out of it. But for the next Monster Hunter, I'm really hoping that they dial things back a little bit. And maybe consider some of these things. Maybe consider going back to your roots a little bit and seeing what it looks like to make a slower game with these impressive visuals that they've achieved with Monster Hunter World, with the fluid combat that they've achieved with Monster Hunter World, but just having a bit of a slower game. And a slower game is not just in terms of the hunting aspect either, because like all the things that I've talked about reinforce the hunting aspects of Monster Hunter, which is what I think diversifies it from other action games. Because there's always that discussion. Is Monster Hunter an RPG? Is it an action game? What is? In my opinion, it's 1,000% an action game. That's what Monster Hunter is. But it's a unique action game that distinguishes itself from the others with the management of items. Like what we're doing right here is like, oh, I'm out of like potions and whatnot, and I'm kind of screwed. I'm looking for the monster, like fires breathing that... Am I out of potions? Why was I don't know. I think I have a debuff of some kind. Yeah. I'm out of like cold potions or something, and I'm like eating, and I'm, managing the inventory, and I'm trying to wave to the balloon guy to tell me where the monster is because I sucked at applying paintballs. But again, that's what differentiated this game from all the other action games. It's the hunting aspect of it. It's almost like a simulation in a lot of ways. Not like a realistic simulation, but a simulation of what it would be like to hunt a monster in this world, right? The simulation aspect of needing to eat food, of needing to sharpen your weapon, of needing to drink these magical potions in order to, not really magical, but of drinking these potions in order to be able to sustain yourself in these environments. But anyway, besides all of the hunting aspects, I think that there's something to the in-between hunts that we can talk about as well. So one of the things that I've talked about a lot, and I don't know how many people care about this, but I miss having a farm. And I've talked about this in the last podcast as well. I really miss having a farm. I think that the farm was a really cool aspect of the game. Actually going into a farm, a physical place, you could mine things, you could fish things, you'd have your palicos, you actually plant the seeds, you would see it in the thing. It's not just like, oh, just here's a herb and now give me like as many of these as you can. And they'll be like, yeah, come back in 10 hunts and then we'll give you like a bunch more of these herbs. Come back in 10 hunts and we'll give you a bunch more of this honey. I mean, if you think, for instance, about the Meowcenaries, my Meowcenaries, what are they doing? They're getting me honey all the time. All the time. It's like all 3 of my palicos that are in the No, is it the Meowcenaries? No, not the Meowcenaries. The Argosy, whatever, the submarines. They're just out gathering honey. And they just bring honey back. And it's like, it was way cooler when you would go to the farm and you would actually go to like the bee thing and you would collect your honey there. And you would decide, okay, I need this bug or I need this thing. And you put it there. There's an actual physical space where you do all of these things. It adds immersion. All of these things add immersion. That's one of the biggest things that I miss from Freedom Unite is having that farm. I think that was really cool. And then on top of that, I also miss some of the Palico minigames. There were cool Palico minigames that you could do. When you think about the Meowcenaries, you just send them out. Like that's your minigame. You go out there and you're like, okay, give me points. Out they go. I wasn't the biggest fan of like the GU minigame where you fire them off of a cannon, but like 4U had a fantastic little minigame. It was almost like a tiny little mobile RPG. You could almost say with the system of like red beats blue, blue beats yellow, yellow beats red, something like that. And you would send your Palicos out and then you'd decide what type of attacks they would use in their thing. I think that was cool. I think that was a really cool aspect. So having those mini games, having that farm, really, really fantastic stuff. And I really, really would like to see that come back. Maybe don't make it as essential as it was to Freedom Unite because obviously a lot of players are not going to want to engage with that. I understand because like the community is much expanded since back in those days. But just have that as an optional thing. So say, for instance, you could have the trading system that you have in the game right now where you give them, here's some herbs, bring me back more herbs. Here's some honey, bring me back more honey. You can have that system, and that would give you like, say, 60% of the materials that you could potentially get if you actually use the farm. If you use the farm, you get more materials. But the farm still is optional. And at the end of the day, you do the farm a little bit at the start of it. And then once you start, getting further and further into the game, the farm becomes more and more optional because you just amass a wealth of materials. But what I think is not good is, for instance, what Iceborne did. Even though it was fun, like I thought it was really fun, the Steam works. But I mean, it was fun, but I'm sitting on 9,999 mega potions. I'm never going to need mega potions ever again in that game, no matter how many hours I play, because I have 9,999 mega potions. And I didn't even have to put in that much effort. You just go in there, just like spin the wheels, like here's millions and millions and millions and millions of everything that you could possibly ever need. Right? Seems like a good system, but it just removes that preparation aspect, right? It just makes it so that you don't have to worry about crafting your own potions. You don't have to worry about it. You can just get, you can just keep getting those potions for free, basically. Right? So that's another one of the things that I think is important. That farm, some Palico mini games for you to do in between hunts. Give us stuff to do in between the hunts. I think that is cool. Again, optional things. You don't have to do them. But if you do them, you get a little bit of a carrot, right? That's the way that I like to think about those things. And, oh wow, we actually finished the hunt. I'm surprised. I wasn't expecting to last this long on the video. I'm going to rewind this just a little bit because I still have to talk about one more thing. And that is one of the things that fascinated me the most about the podcast where we talked about Monster Hunter DOS, which was seasons. I think seasons are a very interesting concept. I'm not exactly sure how I would like to see them implemented, but I think it would be interesting for you to like have these differences. This is something that I remember was present in like Monster Hunter Tri, because at the end of Monster Hunter Tri, you'd be able to go into the deserted island, right? That's what it's called, the deserted island, and the monsters that would be there would be different depending on. It was almost like it had the season system. It wasn't an actual season system, but it was almost like that. I think there are interesting things that they can do with the seasons from DOS that don't necessarily have to be as restricting, but at the same time add some flavor to it. Those are my thoughts. Like I said, I feel like Monster Hunter is going faster and faster towards the route of being more arcade and more speedy, and it's just like more of a boss rush than necessarily a hunting game. And I know that, that's brought in a lot of people, but at the same time, I think that those people could still enjoy a slower, more methodical experience with the fluid combat that we have in both World and Rise. Not necessarily the exaggerated mobility that we have in the form of wire bugs, which we'll still have in Sunbreak, but not necessarily that exaggerated mobility, but just like more fluid combat than the older games. And at the same time, have those preparation aspects of tracking the monster, of actually being more like a simulation type thing. I think that we could do that. But those are my thoughts. I'm curious to hear from anybody who watches this on YouTube on the comment section. And I'm also curious to hear from you guys here on the stream. We're going to talk about this. But if you're just watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. Comments, feedback, all that stuff. And hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.